So I'll start with a brief introduction and then ask you, I guess, to give a little bit more description of yourself, and then we'll move into the topics we just mentioned. So, yeah.
Okay, thanks,
Three,
Gordon.
two, yeah, thank you. All right.
Okay,
Yeah.
great.
Hi.
It's my honor to be on this forum and have this opportunity to share some of my point of view to everybody here. And my name is Olivia Ji. I'm the founder and also president of Event Bank. Event Bank is one of the global leading cloud technology company, and we have two SaaS software products. One is membership SaaS. It serves lots of global membership organizations to manage their membership, their member events, their member publication, the whole engagement, CRM. And the other one is event marketing SaaS. And our clients is like from economists to KPMG. And you can tell I'm very proud of my company. It's a young company, and it's by a group of young talents. Same as my team, like Jen here, my assistant, she also support today's conversation. And my young team came from 15 different countries. They're very talented, they're hardworking, they're fun. And we created this company from just a few pages of business plan until today we have clients in global 60 countries. And myself, I'm a Beijing girl and born in Beijing, grew up here. Then I joined in an internet company called NetEase as my start of my career. And very lucky, this company is the third company listed in Nasdaq from China in the first internet wave. And after this company, I founded my first company. Is I started as an individual entrepreneur, and for that company, I'm as one of the youngest female business leader of an internet company in China. And Event Bank is my second company. And I think one thing I've been putting to give some opinion of this education topic is also because I also studied in Australia, the University of Sydney, for my master degree. And also I set up a scholarship in the University of Sydney to support international students because I was an international student that time. I know how hard life is. So after I graduated, I set up a scholarship to support the hardworking, excellent international student to achieve the results they want in our senior uni business school. So that's a little bit information about myself and my company. Thanks, Gordon.
Well, thank you, Olivia. That is truly amazing. So today's session is about China as a market for educational technology. So given this, could you give some further comments on how do you think the Chinese educational system is and the societal culture surrounding it is different and special as compared to the Australian system or the American system? Or yeah.
This is a very interesting question. And I want to share one of the story, like my own story. So when I started in a primary school in Beijing, it's one of in Beijing, the school, like the top school, like the famous school and the average school. I'm very lucky to be into this one of the top school called Beijing Shijia Hutong Xiaoxue. So on my fifth year, so which is that time I'm 10 years old, 11 years old, you can imagine I'm still a kid. On my mathematics class, there's for 2 months, every day we have one exam, every day. And every day we have one exam, and the next day, I have 35 classmates. Next day, my head teacher will tell all the students everybody's points of the previous day's exam. So she will say, Olivia is 100 points, or Olivia is 70 points. So the way she read it is from the top one to the bottom one for 2 months, every day. So you can imagine it's very, very stressful. And myself, it's very interesting. I was transformed to this school like on the fifth year. So when I beginning join this school, I'm on the bottom. So every time when I read the result, I'm on the bottom. And when I telling about this story is the fifth year. Like I'm with another guy. Him and myself is the top. So we are 100 points, 100 points, 100 points every day. Until the 28th days, I did one wrong answer. I became 98 points. And then the next morning, and I refused to go to school.
Mm.
And then my parents like had a conversation with me because for me is I'm at that level of competition and I want to maintain my result always 100, 100. So my parents brought me to the school around 10 a.m. The first exam time already finished, and then my head teacher asked me stay in her office, finish that day's exam. And then after I
Mm.
did that, she marked it in front of me at 100 points. So if today I look back, I think that's incredible, very competitive, and a little bit cruel for young kids, right? You in front of everyone to get to know result every day. So I
Mm.
think this is show two things very different in China. One is China as a country have lots of population and with relatively limited education resources, especially when I grew up. Today it's much better. So very, very competitive. The teacher is very stressful, students are very stressful, so it's very competitive. Secondly, it's they give you lots of challenge on what level you can handle stress and you can handle kind of called facing. Like in overseas like school, lots of time they think that's a kind of privacy, right? They protect you and not make it too transparent. But in China, so I grew up from primary school to middle school, it's very transparent. You go to a billboard, you see where you're ranking and your result and in front of everyone. But I want to make a point. I don't want to be a judgmental say this is not good or overseas or states US system is good. I don't want to say that. I only want to say it's very different because myself today, I would say make who like am I today and lots of competitiveness, very strong mindset, very much know what I want and very confident and can get into highly competitive and it's because my experience. So I can't say that's not good. I think that's just the different. So make people very different. So I think
Yeah.
China's system actually builds very strong born person like myself. We're very competitive and we can handle lots of stress because one day when you get into technology world like where I am, like when I talk with venture capitalists, there's so many brilliant young entrepreneurs talk with them. So if you do not like waiting to be stronger, be competitive, and want to win, and you wouldn't get there. So I would say it's a little bit more cruel, more hardship on young kids, but that also make part of your personality and you strong. Another thing I would say very different is the discipline part being mentioned very strongly in China education. There's a good and bad. The good thing is you can see because we grew up with the strong discipline, like coronavirus come, everybody stay home, then everybody stay home. So people know there is a bigger like goal. We have to get together, we have discipline and then to achieve it, like control the virus. But there's also something not good. When a kid grow up with a strong discipline, sometimes even myself, I feel I'm very much into you give me a clear goal and I get it done. But sometimes if you
Yeah.
give me a blank, let me create something, I would say I
I mean, thank you for your experience, Olivia. I myself, I'm from international school in China, an American system. So I think throughout my childhood, I had a taste of both the Chinese system through extracurricular activities, some classes outside, and also the more international system. I think even though I hope that I had more discipline as a kid, I spent a lot of my free time wandering around. And there are still times right now, I think maybe it could have fostered creativity, but also right now I feel like there's times I wish I'm as creative as some of my foreign counterparts. But I don't know, I feel like eventually in high school, as a realization, I found out even though I'm in an American system, it gives me the freedom to be disciplined. And I think when I came realized I started to take classes on myself and pretty much just I think have a choice in what classes I want to take outside, even though I didn't have much free time as some of my classmates. But I chose to, I guess, take classes in a more Chinese way of things that I was interested in, and I think that helped shape the way I am right now and how I am approaching an American college experience. With that said, you mentioned how you feel like that sometimes your education background might have brought you some disadvantages as compared to your foreign counterparts over some skills like creativity or perhaps critical thinking. And do you think that as a market supply and demand, should educational technology innovators consider more products invested to help the students take classes better? I mean, take exams better, approach exams better, or to develop these critical thinking and creativity skills that might not be as effective towards their learning and gains in the short term, but perhaps possibly posit a better development over long term and may not as reflect that much on the Gaokao exam.
Mm. That's a very interesting question. I think first of all, I want to establish one point is if we play cards game, Golden, if you play cards game, you
Mhm.
never really get a hand of
Yep,
perfect cards, right? And
that
it's
is true.
also
Yeah.
now the people get the best cards win. So one the
Yep.
way we grow up and the way we get into the like life to manage our personal
Yep.
life or to manage our business, every individual very different. We born
Mhm.
different, we grow up different. So I think like lots of time is like we figure out our strengths and weakness and we smart to play the cards in our hand instead of compare our
Mhm.
cards. So I think
Yep.
most of the time we win or we get into a better place because we really know our strengths and we win by emphasizing our strengths and smartly played out. So that's one thing. So that's why the reason I want to put this idea first is I don't want anyone later on compare of education they go through and they got into inconfidence or doubt about themselves. Definitely no need. Secondly, I want to say I totally agree with you. I think the current education system, not only China, also US everywhere, is it
Yep.
need to speed up a little bit, adapt to the real world these days. For example, when we grow up, there is no Google and no Baidu. So we learning the way we search knowledge very different from today. So today, if when school teaching things, so because when they get into real life, the skill they need are very different. But you can see lots of textbook is still the old logic, the old way of learning process. But the real world already changed. So I definitely feel like school a little bit behind with what is really happening. But there is lots of actually very interesting program is in the marketplace. I think one thing is we just need to identify those good program, help them can get into the formal education system and be recognized. For example, last week when I do some market research, prepare for today's conversation, and I see a very
Mhm.
interesting program for actually 5 years old, 5 to 7 years old. It's called like the two main thing. One is young entrepreneur. So the whole course is start with 5 years old kids. Is the first class is start with what business you want to create. And you can imagine those kids thinking about lemonade or games because they play so many iPad games. And then next course is about design your logo. Then going from there, I like it because it gives 5, 6 years kids a real experience about from 10 class, online class, about how a business started happened. And the other class is about a little diplomat. So basically, you tell me which country want to know your diplomats now, and let's get understand about their culture, their music, their foods. And do you know what diplomats need to do? You need to talk about the country, you need to build relationship. So this type of course is very interesting, and the kids need to do research, need to learn. And another thing more important is actually create a role for them, a role, not a kid. is like a real person in the society, and they have a taste of what it's going to look like and what is the logic. I like this stuff. I think that's really really fascinating and should get into the formal school system, because formal school system they have a advantage is they occupy the major hours of a kid's study time. So if there
Yeah,
is a better quality program in there, and kids can dedicate more energy into the knowledge, the information more helpful for their future development and build their confidence. Because when they go through this kind of course, they're feeling them more can participate into their parents' conversation or adults' conversation. When they watch news, they kind of feel they know a little bit, right? When they watch a CEO interview, they can think about their lemonade business. So give them a confidence about early stage to get involved with a kind of like adults world. I think that's really interesting and what the school maybe should do more. Yeah.
that is amazing. It's the generation ahead of us is probably going to have, I mean, more social learning and emotional learning than we had at that time. And it's really amazing to oh,
Definitely. Yeah.
yeah. 有点卡，有点怎么能够解决一下？不好意思，这个还好吗？
Okay.
All right, okay. Yeah, I think I'm better now. Sorry for the tech issue. Yeah. So, so I mean, you mentioned about these programs, and how do you imagine technology being in place in fostering these learnings of, I think, apparently skills beyond knowledge, and perhaps more of the emotional and social side of one's developments?
Big role. Number one, I think technology is bringing fairness, right? Because education is never a fair play. Like we see so many
Yeah,
kids, they in a poor area, so
yeah,
they not access the same kind of concept, the same kind of teaching capability. But with
yeah,
technology, yeah, with technology, finally kind of even out. Still have lots of things need to be do, but there's a possibility like a cheaper way and to get those like knowledge to spread out. So this is why like even for my company, we always say technology is not just for technology. There's lots of IT guys, sometimes they want to develop some new feature, just want to show they're very cool. But that's not really the goal of technology, right? It's not about show off. It's not about show off your code. Technology actually eventually is a current to human being. It's solving human being real challenge and real problem. So I think number one is technology can really give more fairness to all the kids need education. Secondly, I think especially with all this coronavirus, all this uncertainty, like technology make you can access education easily. I think you heard about the company VIP Kids. It's funded by Li Wenjuan, one of my very good girlfriend. When she found that company, we did lots of discussion. So because that company is really bridging the lots of US teachers can really face to face have conversation, speaking lessons with Chinese kids. One funny thing is my sister-in-law, she is in Fairfax in States, Virginia. And now she spends some part-time actually teaching kids from different provinces in China. So last time when I went back to States, Christmas, she said, hey, could you bring back one of the detailed map of China? I said, because she used to only know Beijing, Shanghai, Shenzhen, Hong Kong. She said, I have a student in Changzhou. I want to know where is Changzhou. So then I ordered a map bring back to him so he can do some mark there. It's not only about
right.
education, it's also about a kind of create communication bridge between China and the US. They build friendship. So through
Yeah,
education behavior, actually bring out a link between the two countries, between the two cultures, especially today when the world has so many politics play or different kind of their conversation, right? So I think between people and people connection became more important. From there, we can know more, understand more, and help support each other more as human beings, not as American or Chinese. So that's the second thing. The third thing is, I think when our life actually transformed lots of to online. So basically, education process went through technology tools actually develop a new part of brain of our kids. So they definitely be able to process a lot more information, a lot more calculation. They definitely became much more efficient, I think, than my generation because they access so much and also they from very young age they deal with machine, not like me. I only deal with the older generation of adults when I'm young, like they are my teacher. But young kids today, they not only deal with human, they also deal with AI machine. So I believe in their brain have certain part being developed we may not familiar with, but it's very valuable. So that's my three point of view. It's great. Some people very negative about the technology development, about AI, everything. I'm very positive. I always very much believe in the future. I think all this bringing a much better, much more exciting future to us than we shouldn't be over concerned. And there is a lot more interesting, exciting thing waiting ahead of us.
Yeah, certainly. Even for my generation, I think there are concerns that I think we're Gen Z that grew up with internet and technology and how it might influence us to be more or less socially abled as we deal more time with on
Mm-hmm.
phones and technology. But I guess it seems like it's also a skill to have to deal with interact with technologies as much as it is with humans.
Definitely.
And yeah, this is it is interesting to consider that dealing with technology would be a skill as much as importance as humans. And how might you think of perhaps how classrooms can be different in the future was students both learning to interact with their teacher figure and also with computers that might facilitate the task of knowledge transmission to students.
Try to video cut a little bit of our conversation. Try to find
For
the
sure.
angle. Okay. I think about um I feel going to have lots of task oriented with technology to achieve certain goal instead of like I teach you certain thing. So because this is more like our real workplace today. So the other day I read a very interesting book about Samsung. So Samsung did a research about I talent and T talent. So how they define I talent? I talent is the people very focused on certain academic field, and then they became master
Mhm.
doctor. They very much expert on light or expert on
Right.
electronic. And then T talent is more like the talent maybe did the art bachelor and then did the computer master. So it's much more range of different knowledge crossover. So the research they did
Yeah.
is worldwide for Samsung. The iTalents leading department, actually their revenue growth, innovation capability is much the T level talent much higher than the I level talent. So what this
Right.
tell us? Actually, in workplace, how we initial task is normally is for a goal. We we grew up different talent, right? It's never like for a certain
Yeah.
goal and we identify lots of I talent working towards the direction. So I think since
Mhm.
workplace, the good thing, the good piece of art or the good business plan, business development of good tech innovation is done by this way. I would imagine in the future the school should done in this way. So basically in a classroom, it's more about task fulfill and achieve and further certain goal. You got to know how to find the answer about certain questions, certain things, certain challenge, how to solve, and you got to know who you team up with. So it's much more task oriented way approach.
in that way. Yeah. Yeah. It was interesting. I was listening to a podcast, I think, about how recommendation algorithms could be used in schools in order to personalize what knowledge a student learns or the way they learn. And I was thinking about how that relates to the generalist view, and that a recommendation algorithm could give a student, I guess, a range of topics to explore that they might be interested in. But in that way, it's also kind of deterministic about how like even though you are well read across multiple disciplines, those disciplines are still sort of determined by an algorithm towards what your strengths are. And perhaps I guess that's a good thing. That might be a step beyond an eye talent, but also the horizontal line of the T is also kind of determined by an algorithm. And I was wondering, I guess perhaps human choice might not be that much difference, because we would eventually find out that those are things we like predicted by the algorithm. But also, what does that sort of imply about how much, I guess, algorithms could influence or interact with ourselves, and about, I guess, if a teacher knows a student, is that any different from algorithm knowing a student and fostering the direction that they grow in?
Yeah, then that will be really good. It's like education can be more personalized, right? So
Yeah,
the educator really know a little bit more who you are instead of give every student the same thing, standardized. It's more
yeah,
personalized. It's more for you and can further develop your strengths and your interest and your passion. That's great. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, so I guess maybe there's one day that even though teachers' attentions is limited, algorithms could give a better personalized track or direction towards where a student would grow. But would that sort of in its sense limit how a student grows, in that it's sort of determined by the data it feeds into the algorithm, which I guess you can say that better algorithms would evolve in the future that will address the problem like these
Yeah.
for a
I think
student's development.
then, yeah, my suggestion, the number one thing is
Yeah,
for young kids, at least conference about curiosity, right? I think we should
yeah,
like very much encourage each individual from very young kids to adults. You always need to be
yeah,
very curious about everything. So that's actually
certainly.
the best drive for learning. Secondly, I think I don't like the words of authority. So
Mhm.
I think from very young age, we should tell kids there's nobody is authority of your life. So nobody
Right.
know you better than you. So you can
Mhm.
always make your own decision and challenge what is right, what is wrong. So I think lots of time
Mhm.
parents like to say like transparency, 听话到学校听老师的话. I don't think that
Yeah,
is smart. I think you should only 听话 when the teacher is right, or you should only 听话 when the thing not about right or wrong is really fits you. So I think when you
yeah,
create an open mindset, let the kids know they can as individuals think about things, discuss about things, instead of have to follow everything, every teacher tell them, and then that is a good start for they can become independent and explore the world and develop themselves. Another thing is in many interview, like I tell the media, I never believe in 大众智慧. I don't know what's the best
mhm.
translation. It's more like a majority
Listen with
wisdom,
the crowd.
something like
Yeah,
that, right? So
yeah,
then they
yeah.
ask me why. Because they say all the major decision in the world is voting, and who is the majority decide who is the president. I say it's a
Mhm.
problem because because I never think about the world. The successful
Yeah,
people and happier people, only the top 10% or 5% or even 1%. You can see so many people not happy and not successful. And
yeah,
like the top people must have different way to think about things, do things. That's why they became different. But if every major
yeah,
decision you all do a poll and you all do a majority voting, then you can
yeah,
only get the average, right? So I,
yeah,
I really don't
definitely.
suggest my friend in their major life decision. They say I need to ask all my friends and my relatives around me, and then like six people suggest this and four people, so I go with the six people. I tell them, no, don't do that because that will only 大众智慧 is not 大众智慧, it's not wisdom, it's only average. And if you want to be
Yeah,
better, and you have to have your own way to do things, and you have to be in minority. You're never the majority.
yeah,
So that's also my side. Like I hope from very young age, people build up. They know they have to be the minority, and they have to think for themselves.
yeah. I think this century definitely values independent thinkers, especially with so much information online. It is very easy to fall into so many problems we see about polarization, about echo chambers, and all these different subgroups all having the same opinions. And with information so accessible, it's definitely important to have an independent and critical thinking mind in order to address or think about the information presented and not just follow blindly, like so many incidences we see around the world.
Definitely.
Um,
And lots of times you even have to intentionally be different, right? That's why we talk about
yeah,
black sheep, we talk about purple cow. That's why we have a word called the differentiate, competitive, or advantage. If you don't have the different part, then you can only be into a red sea competition. Why there is a thing called blue sea? It's because you're different. So you have to, sometimes you even have to push yourself be different.
yeah, certainly. Well, I think our time is up, Annie. Sorry. This has been a pleasure. This has been a pleasure. Thank you, Olivia. Yeah,
Thank you, Golden. Thank you, Annie. And I very much
yeah.
enjoyed the conversation. Thank you,
This
guys.
this was thank you. This was a pleasure to talk with you. Thank you very much.
Bye.
Have a nice day.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye, Annie. Bye, Golden. Bye.
Yeah. Yeah.